Welcome to, I don't know why I said it like that, I just felt like I needed to start with a big bang. But welcome to this week's episode, or this month's episode of the Sensat podcast. I honestly don't know what number this is. It's either 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6. I haven't really been listening to all of them. You'll probably notice that the voice is slightly different to the last one. It's not Harry Atkinson. My name's James Fricker. I'm the Managing Director of Sensat. And I'm joined by Mr. Cosgrove. Jimmy, James, which one do you prefer?
I think you know the answer. I think you know it's Jimmy.
Jimmy Donny Cosgrove, the famous celebrity author. Do we say author or writer?
Writer.
What's the difference?
Author's in book form, and a script writer is on television or film.
A script writer. And you wrote Warren, the smash hit comedy series starring Martin Clunes, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I wrote a BBC One sitcom this year called Warren with Martin Clunes. I didn't write it with Martin Clunes. I wrote it with a writing partner. But Martin was in it. Yeah.
Well, how did that go?
How bad is bad?
Ooh, define bad for me.
Well, it was worse than that.
Ooh.
The Times called it the final nail in the sitcom coffin. The Guardian said it was dire. And the Telegraph said, if you can stomach half an hour of this, I'll give you 15 quid.
Well, it's a good job you found yourself a new career at Sensat, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well done. Good to have you. I wanted to introduce today's topic. We're going to be talking about mental health. So we'll probably get quite deep at certain points. If our listeners find it difficult at any point, you can just pause it, which is quite nice, and then come back to it at a later date. Make sure you do come back because there'll be some good nuggets towards the end. But Jimmy, actually, before we kind of dive into it, you brought this subject up with me, didn't you? It's something that you wanted to talk about. So tell me why you wanted to talk about this.
Very sadly, over the weekend, a family friend died, committed suicide, sadly. And I didn't really know how I could help. And the only really way that possibly I could help other people is by talking about my problems. I hope it's not too self-indulgent to say that, but I don't really know how else that I could help people. But maybe the best way is saying, okay, I suffer as well, and it's okay, and talk to me. If you know, I don't really know, Jamie, but I just felt I didn't know how to help, and this might be the best option.
Firstly, I'm sorry to hear the news over the weekend. When we messaged last night and you brought that with me, obviously it must be quite a difficult time for you. And I think from my experience within the workplace, I've definitely witnessed people struggling or finding it difficult to talk about these types of things. So I think it's good that we can put a bit of a spotlight on it. And hopefully the next kind of 10, 15, 20 minutes will kind of highlight some of the ways that we can talk about different things and the reasons why. But I first met you, maybe 6-7 years ago?
Mm-hmm. 2013,
2013. You made me laugh then, which was good. And comedy's always been a big part of your life. Do you think that you use that as an outlet, as a channel?
As a channel for hiding the mental health? No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so, actually, Jamie. I think I use comedy because I like it and I like making people laugh. I don't think I use it to hide behind anything. But I think where I am quite an outgoing person, it's very noticeable when I'm kind of a bit down and a bit on a dark day.
Yeah.
So that's quite obvious to other people. A lot of other people always say, you know, what's up with you today? And because they don't know, because I'm not open about it. And I hope this is the start of saying, I just don't really want to talk to you today.
Yeah. And I think it's often the case, isn't it, that people who probably have the biggest personalities are often people that are struggling the most. And I think that it's good to try and put a spotlight on these different areas so people can recognise this within the workplace, because it is okay not to be okay, and it's about recognising that. What was the kind of the tipping point for you with your own personal journey in terms of recognising that?
When I was 15, I was diagnosed with depression, and I was still at school, and this was 99, 2000 sort of time.
Right.
So there wasn't really, I don't think school really know what to do. My mum and dad didn't really know what to do. There was an option to go on medication, but they chose, as my guardians, to do some counselling, which I did for a few weeks, 6 weeks or so. And I suppose I quite liked it because I got Friday mornings off work, off school, sorry. then I kind of was flirting with it for a while, and then I got diagnosed in my second year of uni again with depression, and the tipping point was really I was just having panic attacks quite a lot. Couldn't really breathe. I remember I had a panic attack in Asda, and it was crazy. I didn't know what to do, and my mum basically said, "You aren't going back to university until you've been to the doctor." So she kind of gave me an ultimatum. And I went to the doctor and was diagnosed and had some medication, and that's when the official journey started, I'll call it, because the 15-year-old, I can't really remember that one well, but that one I certainly do remember.
I mean, what a credit to your mum to recognise that as well. And I guess that must have been a bit of a sign for you as well, I guess, to put kind of such an impression on you to look at getting that resolved. Did it feel that way at the time, or did it feel like it was more of a burden and a chore?
I don't think I actually realised how down I was until the medication started kicking in about 4 or 5 weeks later.
Right.
And I felt like a new person. I felt like I didn't actually know who this person was that I'd become, because it felt like maybe I'd been depressed for probably longer than I realised.
Yeah.
So I'm obviously grateful for it now, but at the time I was just like, I'll just go and see the doctor and shut her up, sort of thing. And I wanted to go back to uni because I don't like being at home because it's boring. Yeah.
and I guess for the listeners that don't know Jimmy Donny Cosgrove, he likes to be, prefixed with famous celebrity and published writer. So I won't use that throughout the podcast because it would take too long. But you're a big character. As you've mentioned, you like to make people laugh. You enjoy other people's company. And I guess going from 15 to university, they're kind of key areas where you can make people laugh and have an impression in such a big way. Did you find that when depression kind of came over you, that actually made things more difficult to make people laugh?
No, actually, I didn't find it. I just found it more difficult to interact or to be interacted with. Or I didn't like being on my own, but I didn't want to talk to people when I was with them. So there was kind of quite a difficult stage, really, where I was stuck in the middle. And of course, when you're around people and you're not yourself, people notice, and it starts to affect them as well, which is quite unfair. But also, they'll sort of say, "Oh, I can't stand it when you're like this," and you can't really help it. There's a lot of difficulty there, being stuck in the middle.
What I'm quite interested in, actually, and I think what would help the situation and put a big colour on, if you don't mind explaining, I guess some of the symptoms that you might show or might manifest itself in yourself when you are having depression. And you've mentioned a kind of a couple that you become a little bit more withdrawn, become a bit sad, but what else might people see in somebody who has depression?
I think just probably not very visibly not being how they are normally. I mean, I think everybody puts a front on. Everyone will do that for whatever reason. But I think we do that as humans. But possibly, if you notice somebody is a bit quieter or is a bit more sullen, doesn't really want to go out, is avoiding work, is avoiding the pub or using the pub too much, things like that. I don't really know how. You might be the best person to answer how you think I am when I'm feeling quite sad. That might be actually an answer to the question for you, back at you. What do you think about me when you notice? And you do notice.
Yeah, and I do. And I think for me, having known you a long time, when you're kind of going through a bout of where you're not enjoying life as much as you normally do, you're always the life and soul of the party. So I think there's a couple of things that's quite interesting for the mannerisms that you, I guess, exude in many ways. You'll come into the office, you'll bound about, you'll say hello to everyone, you'll offer people cups of tea. Not me, but you'll offer everybody else a cup of tea. And the moment you don't bound into that office, you don't have that glow and aura about you. I almost think there's two sides to it, because there's one is that everybody looks to Jimmy Donny Cosgrove for the laugh. And that's why I kind of started with the question in terms of, does your comedy mask your depression in many ways? Because that must also carry a bit of a weight behind it, because actually when you do become depressed, I noticed that that it does seem like there is a weight behind that people are looking you almost expectingly, Jimmy's going to make a gag in a minute, Jimmy's going to make a gag in a minute. And because you don't, and because I know you, I know Jimmy needs some space and some time and support. I guess that's kind of the way that I notice those things. You're just very quiet and withdrawn. Does any of that kind of resonate with you?
Yeah, I think I can't speak for other people, but I certainly, when I am having a bout of depression, that I do withdraw, and sometimes I don't get out of bed, and sometimes coming to work is literally the last thing I want to do. But it passes, and that's the key. Is that it might take a week, it might take a month, it might take a day, but it does pass.
Yeah.
And I speak to a counsellor once a month. I go and speak to someone once a month just to talk, because I think it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. And you shouldn't have to always talk to your mates all the time. You should actually probably talk to a professional who can say, well, let's try and monitor this and make sure. Sometimes, they'll ask me, how was the last week? And I'll get my diary out. And some of the days are very dark when I'm telling them. Yeah. And he'll say, well, what happened? And I said, I just felt all right again. Yeah. And it just passes. It does pass. And
I guess that's a nice thing, to think about that light at the end of the tunnel. But what you've mentioned there is that you do talk. And the studies have suggested that actually, 48% said that they would not talk to their employer about mental health. I mean, that's quite a big stat. So, half of, our employees here, we're a growing organisation, we're up to about 40 to 20 of our employees would not talk about mental health. It's a big stat. So what would you encourage them to do other than, the obvious, which is talk? But you've mentioned a couple of things. It doesn't have to be with your friends or colleagues, potentially.
I think your employer has to know. In a previous job a few years ago, I got on very well with my boss, but
Thank you.
Different boss, I'm afraid. He didn't know that I suffered with mental health problems, and when I told him, he said, "I'm very sorry to hear that, but maybe you shouldn't work here because it's quite a high, stressful place." And it was I absolutely did not want to hear that. I wanted to hear everything's okay, and that's because we're not educated enough, or we're not taught enough about mental health and how to react to that. And it was quite a disappointing response. And it does encourage other people to then think, okay, well, I won't say anything then. But I think you've got to, and I think as soon as you're aware, if your boss is aware, that some days you're just going to be like, look, can you just let me get on my work today? I'm going to put my headphones on. I don't really want to do, anything. And it's the truth. I don't want to do anything some days. But I think, and also if you can afford it, and it's very lucky that I can, is go and speak to a professional. Yeah. Whether it's a grief counsellor, whether it's a anxiety, hypnotherapy, something like that. Yeah. Go and speak to someone. I probably wouldn't go to my GP first. I would probably go to a GP after I'd spoken to somebody else.
Yeah, I think like some of the things you've touched upon there, Jimmy, absolutely resonate with myself. And when I came into this business, and having a few people in the office with various different things that were coming to me, but not fully being able to open up and talk about it. And I think it's something like 95% of employees who call in sick with stress actually give a different reason, which is worrying. And I think the story you've just told there about an old boss of yours, not recognizing, not understanding, is actually quite detrimental, because it almost has that knock-on effect for people not to speak up. So I think actually from an employer's perspective, it's important that they start to recognize these types of issues. They understand them. Would you agree with that?
It's really difficult, because when you don't have mental health problems, it's really easy just to call bullshit, really, and say, oh, that's not, he's putting that on or whatever. And it's, I was actually with friends recently a few weeks ago, and they had a person at their work that was sort of stressed for 2 weeks, and they all worked together, and they were all saying, oh yeah, it's loads of rubbish. And I kind of just stuck up for this guy and said, you actually don't know, because there's nothing, you can't call that. You have to give people the benefit of the doubt. And if people aren't well and are feeling sad or feeling stressed, the last thing you want is the last thing you need is for people at work to think you're lying.
And I can see that definitely having a compounding effect to whatever you're feeling.
Yeah, I've phoned in sick before and not told the real reason. Yeah, many times. Yeah. Not here, no.
Not here, just...
I'll tell you.
Yeah, you tell me. That's good. I guess we've danced around it a little bit, but what are the key reasons as to why people don't speak up? We've said that the stigma that's potentially attached to it, but what else are the reasons, do you think?
Embarrassment. You know, a guy out there just said, "What are you doing the podcast for?" And I said, "Mental health." And as soon as I said it, I almost felt a little bit flushed, a little bit embarrassed, and I had no need to be. But and that's me about to tell the world, you know.
Well, we say the world, it's, you know, a small podcast.
Absolutely, it'll grow. This will go viral, I'm sure. But yeah, you know, it is something that people are ashamed about, and I've been the victim, not the victim. I've been somebody that's seen a colleague. We went away on holiday with colleagues recently, and I saw that they were on the same medication as me. I didn't say anything, and I could have said, "Oh, are you okay? You know, what's the crack? You want to talk?" I didn't say anything, and maybe it's a boy thing. Is it a lad thing? Is it I'm embarrassed? I don't really know.
Yeah.
But the best thing that we can do is just front it and say, "Do you want me to help you? Do you want me to do anything? Can I do anything to help you?"
Well, we've put some initiatives in place at Sensat to encourage people to open up, and myself, who is a bit of a mental health champion internally, I feel we could be doing more, and I want us to do more, and I think the business wants to be doing more as well. In your mind, you know, you've been part of Sensat for a while now. How can we do more? What can we do better?
I think that we've got a place of work where if I was in trouble or if I was feeling sad, I would be okay with saying it. And I think that's a great thing, because I've been at places where I wouldn't be okay at saying it. So I think if we can open up the book a bit more to the mental health experience of other people and the people around us, etc., maybe we can open that book more. Yeah. It's pretty open now, but maybe we can spread the pages slightly.
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the most important aspects from an employer's perspective is about understanding some of these very, very, very common issues that people face day in, day out. Avoiding kind of that stigma, and the example you gave about they've called in sick, but are they really sick? You know, the severity of mental health is enormous, and I think it gets downplayed fairly regularly. You know, so somebody says, "I feel a bit under the weather." A mild case of depression should be treated the same as potentially a broken leg. You know, that's the severity of it, and I don't think people appreciate that. And also the work that we need to do to try and understand that and not be prejudiced towards issues that people face. So how do you think in your mind we can educate people more internally at Sensat, and also our friends, without avoiding kind of stigmas, friends and family?
I just think we need to talk a bit more. I just think I can't think of anything else apart from saying, "I'm really struggling today. I really need something today. I really don't want to come into work. Come into work, have a cup of tea. You don't have to come into work, but come and speak to me for a bit. Come in and say hello. You know, come and stroke the dog, whatever. You know, but get out of bed." It's a really difficult, because you don't want to get out of bed. But if your boss says you need to come into work, I can't. It's really tough, Jamie, because I don't really know the answer. But the only way that I think I can help other people is by saying, "Okay, what do you want me to do? How can I help you? Do you want me to do anything? How are you feeling? You know, what do you want to do? Let's not go to the pub, but let's go for a walk, whatever."
Yeah.
It's hard because it affects everybody in such different ways. There's a huge spectrum of it. And from depression to anxiety to stress, you know, it all comes under a mental health bracket, but it's a big old bracket.
Oh, massive, enormous, yeah. And I think often, maybe this is part of the issue. We've spoken a lot about depression today, and it's not the only thing that people suffer with. You know, there's a plethora of different disorders that people will suffer from. And I think that it's not about the employer having to educate themselves on every single one of them, but it's definitely about the employer being more understanding, not adding that area of prejudice. I think one of the aspects that you've spoken about is coping strategies that you've brought up. what other, adding structure in is something that's obviously important to you, and you've mentioned, not everything fits everything. You can't put square pegs in round holes. But what other coping strategies can people use on a day-to-day basis?
I don't know what other people can use, but for me, it is certainly structure. And the thing I read recently, and it's really resonated with me, and it's called The Duck with the Human Mind. Did I show you this?
No, you haven't. And
okay.
This is a classic example of you, though, Jimmy, is that when you say things like this, I don't know whether you're joking or not now.
No, it's called The Duck with the Human Mind.
Right, okay.
Okay. Now, when a duck has a fight with another duck, it will have a fight for about 5 or 6 seconds with the duck, quite aggressive, really lots of energy, and a very quite dramatic thing to look at.
Right.
And then what it does is it turns around, they both turn around, they'll flap their wings to get rid of the excess energy, and then they will float off and go separate ways. And if that duck had a human mind, they would have the fight, and then the duck would go away, and it would go, that bloody duck, do you see what he did? Do you see what he did? Oh, I can't believe it. I bet he's planning something else. Oh, what's he going to do next? Is he going to... I bet he's told Karen not to talk to me anymore. Now Karen's going to hate me. Oh, God, when I go back, my nest is going to be ruined. That's what the duck would do if it had a human mind, but it doesn't. It turns around, it flaps its wings, and it moves along. So what we need to do, and we need to start being right here, right now, in the present moment, flap your wings and move on. It's difficult. It's more easier said than done, but as soon as something happens that upsets me, I really try and resonate with that. Just be right here in this very moment. Yes, that's upset you, but try and bring it back to right here, right now, and that's all that matters, is being right here. And it's easier said than done. I'll tell you a small example. Last Friday night, I was in the pub, and there were 4 people sat next to us, like 2 couples, and they took a selfie, and I was messing around, and I put my head in the background, did a little funny face. I was a bit drunk. It's not groundbreaking comedy. I didn't expect it to get the reaction I did, which the bloke got very angry at me. Started calling me effing and jeffing, names under sun. I was just like, okay, calm down. I think you've overreacted a little bit. And he was quite cross. Now, the adrenaline in me started to sort of kick in, and I was a bit thinking, okay, where could this go? Could this escalate? So I sort of, pushed it down and sort of said, carry on with your day, you're okay. And so I turned around and started talking again to my friend. I was a bit shaky, and in my head I was saying, okay, right now, that's gone now. Put your mindset into the present moment, right this second. Yeah, he was a bit mad, it was a bit of a crazy reaction, but just try and stay in this moment. And it took maybe 4 or 5 minutes, but I calmed myself down just by saying, that's gone now be here.
So almost compartmentalizing issues,
mm-hmm,
and then grounding yourself, the two aspects to that. And I think that sounds really, really interesting and useful for everybody. Actually.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Well, I sincerely hope you don't get into any more selfies, as I say, fights, but selfies moving forward. And I'm glad that you've been able to share your story, and thank you for doing that. I think it was incredibly powerful, incredibly moving. In your mind, is there a final thought that you'd like to leave people with?
Well, a couple of things. It's okay not to be okay. It will pass. Rather ironically now, Robin Williams once said, suicide is a long-term answer to a short-term problem. And I think that's quite a really interesting line, and a great thing to remember is that you are loved and everything will be okay. It might take a bit of time, but just talk to someone. Please don't do anything silly, because I love you.
Oh, that's amazing. Jimmy, thank you so much. You've been amazing. We should do another one of this probably in 12 months' time, because it'd be great to catch up with you and hear more about your journey. We'll obviously be catching up separately to that. If any of our listeners wants to hear more about some of the initiatives we've put in at Sensat, then please get in contact with us. I believe there'll be some details underneath this. And that just leads me to say goodbye. I think Harry will be with you next time to go back to the monotonous, boring tones of Harry Atkinson. But yeah, no, it'll be good fun. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you on the next one.